And we're back. Welcome back, everyone. Craig and Jonah here today. How are you, Jonah?
Doing pretty good. I was involved in a lot of marital dispute settlement this week, and thankfully it wasn't my own
Yeah,
marriage.
isn't that best of both worlds?
It is. It's a lot of fun speculating.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. So I was supposed to go ice fishing with my neighbor the other day, and the day of, he texted me. He's like, "Oh, I'm sick. I'm not going to make it." I was like, "All right, get better." And then he asked me how I did, and it was a great day of fishing. And I said, "You feeling better?" He's like, "Well, I stayed home because I was sick, but the tyrant made me go and get wood all day and do all these chores for us, so I didn't even get to rest. So I would have been better off going fishing with you." And I was thinking,
this isn't an Amish guy, obviously.
No, not an Amish guy. But I think it's funny because I suspect that he knows exactly how his wife feels about him. I know him pretty well, but she has no idea how the other way. And I think that's funny. I think for whatever reason, that's how it is for a lot of people, I think, where they might hide their innermost feelings. And maybe their wives are too. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it.
My wife likes to pride herself on being very intuitive and able to figure other people out. But I don't think she has me figured out at all. And I'm not sure she even tries that hard.
Speaking of trying hard, that leads me into the next dispute.
None of this is scripted, folks. So
nope. So I was in the gym, and a woman there started talking about what her husband got her for Christmas.
Oh.
And she was not thrilled. So he got her a bunch of things, but one of the things that really made her upset was, she's like, I opened it up, and I had no idea what it was. And here it was a bathroom mat. And it was made of diatomaceous earth, which is supposed to wick away water. So there's no water in your bathroom. And she was complaining about it. And so then I was like, well, this other guy then chimes in, and he's like, well, I know how this goes too. One time my wife was complaining about just how they need new appliances. And so he's like, I'll get her these new appliances for Christmas. She'll be really happy. He said it's a huge mistake. He said he would never get appliances again. And not all the women laughed. He's like, yeah, you don't get appliances. And so anyways, then I went back to the original woman who was complaining. And I said, so what did you get him for Christmas? And she's like, well, I got the digital display in his car fixed. And because he'd been complaining about that. I was like, that seems to me like it's, like appliances or the diatomaceous earth rug, because I said, I'm sure that you were complaining about how the bathroom was wet. You needed to clean the rug. And she was like, yeah, that is true. And it works so well that she wants to go in for the other bathroom.
She'll never let him know that, right?
No,
wait till next Christmas.
Then she was talking about how, she wanted these shoes that she put on the Amazon cart and everything. And she told him that she wanted them, but then he deleted them. And I didn't get into this, but I know exactly how that goes, because she probably said that she didn't really want them, or, they're just shoes. There's just a lack of communication sometimes, where we don't have the same level of communication, I think, as our wives. They're difficult to understand.
I've learned a few things, but boy, there's a lot I don't understand yet. And I think it's a universal phenomenon.
So then this other woman was complaining about how her husband, when they get salmon, he eats too much of it. And I was like, you got your house paid off. Who gives
why was she upset?
Well, so I said, you got your house paid off. It's not a money issue. Like, why do you care how much salmon he eats? It's not like he's eating potato chips and drinking beer.
That's actually a pretty healthy thing, right?
She's like, well, whenever he eats salmon, he makes this comment about how he's like a shark or something stupid like that, and it makes her irritated. And I couldn't defend him for that. But I was like, so maybe you should just speak out and say, don't say stupid things like that, and let him eat the salmon.
No. You got to sit and agitate about it.
It's actually like the passive aggressive approach, where you don't really even know what the hell's going on. And you're supposed to figure that out. You're supposed to be all knowing and know that she's really irritated because you're saying that, not because you're eating the salmon. So then she agreed with me that it was probably okay for me to eat salmon.
But you're going to go back and tell him that? Apologize, I wonder?
She didn't say. I think that she might be more open with him about the shark comment or the stupid comedy mix. I mean, you say stupid things. But apparently says it all the time, which is something I don't think I say anything that annoying, but I agree with her. It's something stupid to say.
About a week ago, I shared in our couples chat, we have this, and I don't know if anyone saw it because it was on TikTok. I can't remember the guy's name. He's super funny, and he always kind of talks about his marriage. And he was talking about, I think that was him, talking about how his wife used the term one fell swoop.
Ah, yeah, that was funny.
But she used it wrong, and so but he made it. Sorry, ladies, if there's anyone listening, it sounds like we're picking on the ladies today, but I had to chuckle because he said, "I'm sorry" is one phrase that is not in her vocabulary. Yeah. Or something like that. He's like, "Well, I'm out here chucking it around."
Oh man, I say I'm sorry. I
imagine if you kept a tally, at least in our.
I'm gonna guess in our household too. It's weighted one direction.
Yeah.
So and it's funny how these disputes can start out. So one of my friends asked me about this coffee plant that we had, and we had one 7 years ago, because his just started producing beans, and so he's wondering if ours had. And so I texted Dolores and I said, do we still have that coffee plant? I haven't seen it for a while. And she goes, no, I never got one. Kind of she always wanted this coffee plant that I didn't, provide.
Oh my.
And so then I was like, I
What?
know we had one. So I dug through my email receipts and found the receipt from fastgrowingtrees.com.
That's not good enough.
And well, no, but it's because I could, there's this tension, that I know I'm right. And I know I provided in this case, and here is the receipt. And it's like, oh, I must have forgotten, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll take that as a win.
Yeah. That's about as close as it gets sometimes.
That's funny.
I mean, marital disputes can happen over anything, and it's often silly, but they feel important in the moment for whatever reason.
Yeah. That's actually a really good segue to what I wanted to talk about today. So there's another podcast called To Become Family. It's Renzo and Monica Ortega. Renzo, I think he mentioned this his last podcast episode, is from Peru. Monica looks like she's right from the Midwest. And they're pretty well-known Catholic social influencers. They have podcasts. I think he works in Catholic young adult ministry, and they get called around to give talks and stuff like that. We haven't been invited to anything yet. There was some kind.
There's a little. Was there? Did you debate with this guy or have a dispute with him for a while?
I've exchanged messages on Instagram with him, which I'm gonna put on my my podcaster hat here for a little bit and vent a little bit.
All right. By the way, you're in a safe space.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that before.
There's no hammers waiting to drop on you.
So I'll get to the point. Make sure I get to the point here. So I've been shocked recently at how many people that have podcasts, etc., especially Catholics, I think mostly Catholics, who, when you want to go and talk to them, literally there's no way to communicate with them other than maybe an Instagram message or a Facebook message. There's no email. I mean, not even an email. To me, an email seems like bare minimum, because I get emails from people all the time.
Yeah. Maybe he's too popular to be concerned with emails.
Yeah. Contact our our social media team or whatever.
Yeah.
I had one guy, God bless his heart, he's been doing stuff way longer than me. Has a podcast that I think is really good, but just doesn't get any traction. And I went on, and it's like, I don't see a place to email you. How do people get a hold of you if they really like your show and stuff? Well, I don't like people having my email. And I'm like,
You just make an email address.
I said, just make a fake Gmail account with your podcast name. And like, he's like, one thing I learned many years ago is you can't make it too easy for people to get a hold of you. I'm like, I think you might be doing it wrong, is what I was thinking. But so anyway, this couple has this podcast, and I have messaged him about our show a couple times, and he was, how would I say it? Amused a little bit, but that was about as far as he got. I said, I would really actually like to have a conversation with you because he's talked about his past struggles and how he overcame them. I'm like, I kind of like to, I'd like to hear that. So
he's like the Rocky of masturbation, you know, overcame all these trials and tribulations.
Apparently, I think I'd like to share that information with people, right?
It's true.
But so the only way you can get a hold of him is an Instagram message, which is fine. What I don't like about Instagram is at least I don't think you can do it through a fake account. Like, so I have to use my real name out there, which fine.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so that I think is one of the reasons why, for us, at least, I think we get although people message me in their real name, but it's just easier for people to reach us under a certain level of anonymity. But anyway, I was just like, but they've got a book that came out. It's called Lovemaking. I actually pre-ordered it. I actually invited him. I said, hey,
you pre-ordered it.
I did.
So you're probably, how many people are on the list do you think that pre-ordered it?
I don't know.
You're on the short list, I think.
Yes. Well, it's to be coming out. And I said, hey,
that should give you a priority for talking to them.
I said, I would actually love to have you come on our podcast and talk about your book. If you want to promote your book. And he's like, I don't know. I don't know if we're promoting it or whatever. And they've got it through, there's some Catholic press, I think, that published it that is handling all that. I'm like, I mean, we're not the biggest podcast of the world, but I'm like, I would think you would like be more aggressive in like I'm reaching out to you, asking you to come on my show so I can talk about your book. And you're just like,
I saw a podcast today on YouTube that only had 700 subscribers, but they got Arnold Schwarzenegger on there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's not quite above Arnold yet.
Yeah. A friend of the podcast was just amazed that we got John Michael Talbot. And I said, the only reason we got John Michael Talbot is because we have email, and they emailed everybody. And I'm like, yeah, we'll get him on your show. But so anyway, the book's coming out. I pre-ordered it, and I'm hoping I'm trying not to like be too critical of them, but fraternal correction, whatever. I think they could make this better if they would make themselves more accessible. So they have this book coming out, and I was listening to their podcast yesterday. It's one of the few Catholic podcasts, honestly, that I listen to, mostly because I just don't have the time. In part, I don't know. It's once you have your own stuff, it's a little more difficult to listen to other people. I find. But every so often I'll listen to them. I'll listen to Christopher West out of morbid curiosity sometimes, but
they're a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, well, isn't that our lot in life?
That's true.
And so I was listening to their podcast episode yesterday, which was on sexual wounds, I think is what it was called.
Okay.
And I've heard a little bit about their story before. Sexual wounds and healing in marriage. And it wasn't real long. It's like 36 minutes. If people have a chance, I think it's actually worth a listen. I think people will find their story much more relatable to some degree than, let's say, not to pick on Christopher West, but sort of that kind of highfalutin way of doing things, as well as some other podcasts that we have that are a little more, I don't know, dogmatic and unempathetic. I actually think I especially like Monica because I think she represents a woman, a Catholic wife who has gone through a lot of the struggles that Catholic women go through, but I think is very more empathetic to her husband's situation.
So when they're talking about sexual wounds, are they talking about like trauma in the past, or like just issues with the rules?
Not even so much that. So it wasn't so much beforehand, although I think they didn't let him, but I think he had some pre-marriage like struggles with porn and stuff like that.
Okay.
Is my assumption or understanding. But it was mostly in their marriage. And so what I remember from their story is when they first got married, they actually struggled with infertility for a while, like for multiple years. And because of that, they could just kind of, it was free reign, right?
Yeah, it sounds traumatic.
It sounds terrible. Yeah, I know.
All right.
But and I'm very curious about this because I believe he said it created a lot of bad habits in him because kind of sex was always available. Kind of.
Oh gosh, yeah, the poor son of a gun.
Yeah. Well, he
isn't that the way it's like part of that feels natural.
I feel like he overcompensates now because he reminds me of some other people that show up in our comments and talk about you just have to have more self-control and not be a slave to your passions and stuff. And he sort of describes himself as a slave to his passions back then, which maybe he was. She is interestingly tries to bring him back and say, look, this isn't all about you. This isn't all your fault. And what's really interesting is she said the way they describe it is she was very codependent, so she felt a desire to like make him happy and stuff. And
boy, that poor son of a gun, boy, I'm feeling worse and worse for him.
Yeah, I know. And he's
not getting much sympathy.
He says that he was in the wrong because he would use sex too much as like a release, as a way to chill and relieve stress in marriage, which it does, like, right? But they describe that as lust. He describes that as lust.
How many times a week are we talking here?
I think it was regularly.
Like every day?
That I don't know. They're good Catholics. They don't give us that kind of detail.
Oh, bull crap. We need to know the numbers, I mean, because if you're talking like even a few times a week, even every day when you're first married, for goodness sakes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and so the way she describes is,
I mean, the fact that they were infertile and then they become fertile, that's almost like an act of God giving you like a.
Well, I think they had to do some hormone different
for him or
treatment.
Her.
I think for her.
Okay. I'm just saying.
I think it was on. I believe it was on her, but I don't know.
All right.
But he is one of these guys that I've seen this a lot in Catholic circles. Guys that, and I'm not sure if like the porn stuff and the solo stuff was something that was pre-marriage or was within the marriage, but I see these guys that were just uncontrolled addicts for that stuff for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Now become, you just got to be a master of your domain, and I just learned how to I can flip it on and off. It's not a problem. It's maybe it is, but I don't know. Hasn't been my experience, right? And it's something that I just, to me, it's a daily regular battle to kind of I don't know, deal with the bodily needs and functions. I don't think I ever got to the point where I was addicted or anything like that.
Maybe they would say you are.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, because that's typically the argument. Well, you're addicted if you can't control it.
I just find that the former addicts are very unempathetic to the things that we talk about. And they say we're just enabling guys and you just have to, I always come back to this example, but someone who was once an alcoholic can't handle a drop of alcohol now. Whereas me, I really enjoy a good drink once in a while, but I can go like weeks or months without
Mhm. Same
alcohol,
with me,
and
yeah.
doesn't bother me at all. Like I don't like wake up, man, I really want to drink.
Mhm.
Like when I drink, I really enjoy drinking, and when I like right,
Yeah.
and when I don't need to drink, I don't need to drink. Like and so um so anyway, but I think I see these guys that really had very disordered um relationships with this kind of stuff in the past, and then I think Christopher West is even an example that they just go hard the other way,
Mhm.
and everyone needs to be this, stoic about that, and maybe that is the end game. I don't know, maybe, but so anyway, so for them, they talk about how for him, he had what they would describe as an unhealthy relationship with sex and his wife, because for him it was primarily fulfilling a physical need
Mhm.
and enjoying
I get that.
yeah enjoying the very real benefits
It's
that
making
come
sense.
from it, right? And how that was somehow misusing his wife, and she felt misused, and it wasn't
She felt misused. She
uh
did, or he perceived her to feel that way?
she seems to say that she felt misused a little
Well,
bit.
we need to know frequency if we're going to discuss that. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
if you're talking 3 times a day, sure. I'll say
yeah, right.
that seems like
Right.
misuse, but like
Honey, it's been
every
been
day
a
when you're
week.
first married?
Yeah, well. So I don't know.
Every day, even now, after like 15 years of marriage, is fine. Joe Pilot.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, so okay, so I'm going to get to Joe here in a second. So just taking a while to
all right.
ramp into this, but so they that really caught my attention, because she's very clear. It's not like she ever felt like he was like coercing her, manipulating her, or anything like that. So I think maybe that answers your
Okay.
question. Like she's like, it wasn't that he had like he just saw me as a physical object, or that I wasn't willing, but it was
Boy, that's all complicated then. I don't know.
well,
I mean,
but for him,
what the hell does that even mean?
well, but for him, he saw sex once they were married as like, primarily this vehicle to satisfy these natural physical desires, which I get, right?
Yeah.
And
I don't know what the problem is.
well, well, here's what I think. Here's where I think.
Like, where does the guilt come from for that? Maybe I'm just that far off, but
It's this idea out of the theology of the body that lovemaking is supposed to be a full gift of yourself to your spouse and receiving them in return. And I think
so how wouldn't it be in that case?
I see within the theology of the body, there's this element of
Where you can't enjoy it too much?
yeah, like the physical is bad, like
Naughty.
like you should be lovemaking despite the enjoyment and pleasure you get out of it, not because of it. Even though I think for most of us,
I think they're thinking too much.
that's well, they felt a lot of guilt about it. And it got to me thinking, because because they talk about the wounds in their marriage, and now their marriage is much better because they have
Because they
sex
never have sex
occupies
anymore.
well, sex occupies a proper place of order now, whatever that means.
I wonder what the hell that means. I want to know frequencies.
Well, see,
We need to know. Inquiring minds want to know.
I don't know. Maybe it says in the book, but I'm not sure. But I think when they talk about this woundedness, and I think in our marriage, I mean, obviously I have some wounds. I wouldn't gone out and started a podcast about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. I think there's a difference between wounds and trauma. Like nothing super traumatic happened.
Mm-hmm.
At least not for me. Maybe my wife would disagree. But there is a level of wounds that come with this. In particular, for him, the thing that he felt got wrong is because he was trying to satisfy mostly more of his bodily needs. That was the incentive for intimacy, especially like I said, when you're infertile and there's no reason to abstain. I kind of wonder if there's really, this seems to be part and parcel of being Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
because for Catholics, and we talk about this all the time, we're told, okay, you can use conjugal act, no birth control, fine, but don't be doing any other stuff in between, right? These biological urges we have,
They're spiritual problems, is what we're talking.
yeah. Don't be taking care of those physical needs yourself or even with your spouse outside the conjugal act. Those are all naughty. Those will send you to hell, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Saturday Night Live had a skit about that this weekend.
Did they?
Yeah, just about how that was. The angels came to God and said, "So we've been watching these people, and that gift of sex you gave them. Well, if they're not with somebody, they can just use their hands. How do we deal with this?" And God's like, "I'll just send them to hell." Anyways, sorry.
But think about it. So like, you're newly married, and for those of us that somehow managed to make it to the wedding day without, more or less with our virginity intact, and I don't know, you're dealing, once you are active, you're dealing with a set of, I don't know, physical desires that I don't think really exist before you're active, at least for me, at least. And that's never shut off. It's like you started up this engine and it never turned off.
Mm-hmm.
So you have these strong physical sexual desires that I think are very biological in origin, probably there for a reason. And yet the only way that you can satisfy those and calm those is through sex with your wife,
mm-hmm.
because God forbid you go in another direction.
All that other stuff is
forbidden. And so
it's
does,
not even tolerated.
Right. So what it does is it forces Catholics, good Catholics, to constantly be seeking sexual intimacy, because that's our only moral outlet for this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in many ways really diminishes the value of sex, because now it is, I think, sort of predictably, primarily there for the physical components of it, not because I suddenly really want to bond with my wife that way. I mean, it's still part of it, but I think the need for the physical benefit of it precedes that kind of that longing for the connection. I think maybe you're a little different than the rest of us, but for me, anyways, that's the way it is.
Gonna just put me off to the side.
Well, for me, I could go a lot much longer period of time without that sort of that need for the physical connection with my wife, longer than I can.
I really like that. I really like that.
I'm not saying I don't like it, but it's not something like, man, I really want to be intimate with you for that reason now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but the physical urges, like, man, it's really, the PMAS that we talk about builds up way before that.
So I have two issues then, whereas you only have one. So what you're saying? It's just more physical, and mine is
much more physical, right?
Well, and I understand that.
And so for me, my whole marriage was trying to make it happen frequently enough so that I wasn't being tempted, often unsuccessfully, but often tempted to take care of the physical needs in another way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a real predictable problem. Like, I think for non-Catholics, or Catholics aren't scrupulous about that stuff, 2352 and all that. I think you still deal with all this stuff. I mean, I think this is just part of being in a sexual relationship with someone. So whether you're Lutheran or Catholic or whatever, I think a certain amount of this stuff just is part of it. But then when you have all this other, these guardrails on the other end, it just forces us into this tense relationship with sex and our spouses, because we're afraid that we're offending God if we deal. We're almost forced to use our wives to satisfy that physical need, because we have no other way to do it. Now I know the good Catholics to say, well, you just have to control those passions. Yeah, that's great, fine, whatever. But for most of us, it's not that simple, and I'm not sure that it's actually supposed to be that simple for us.
And there's really nothing that can heal wounds in marriage the way that intimacy can, and bring you and your wife together.
Yeah. Because on the other hand, they'll say, "Oh, it's a very good thing. God wants it for your marriage, but make sure you're approaching it the right way, whatever. Okay, well, you know what? I think it is a very good thing for marriage, and I think God does want that. But once you cut off alternative ways of dealing with the physical aspect, which I think for most marriages, one spouse deals with that much more than the other, and it's typically the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Once you tell him you can't do that, he's naturally going to gravitate towards, pursuing his wife, trying to pursue sex more often than maybe he otherwise would.
Mm-hmm.
And request or demand it if you're a marital debt guy when it's not really ideal. Like, come on, guy, you've had a long week or whatever. We just got back from vacation or whatever. And like, oh yeah, but my soul's on the line here, right?
Yep, it's true. It's a dire need and it's urgent.
Yeah. So who wouldn't say that the risk of hell isn't such a good enough reason to justify
marital debt? Essentially.
Yeah, right. I think exactly. I believe marital debt is an unavoidable thing as long as you're going to say solo and stuff is grave matter and send you to hell. Like I'm not
philosophically that makes sense.
I see why it's there, but I think it reflects a very I think it's a very good system. I think there's a lot of problems with it. And so for me, I even though I think there are grounds to scrutinize and question how the popes have come around to, let's say, condemning contraception. I continue to think the contraception for most of us isn't the answer, and would bring with it its own bag of problems for the marriage that we'd have to deal with. So if the church says, look, the conjugal act is sacred, if you're going to do that, it needs to be left kind of as I designed it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you invariably have the need for physical intimacy, physical release, or intimacy with your spouse, but the conjugal act is not available, here I gave you these other options. To me, that makes a lot of sense. That would make a lot of sense. And I think would be a very robust response to those that say, well, we need contraception. Well, no, you don't. Maybe you don't.
You've got other options. But then pulling out, where does that fit in there? It's kind of the gray area.
Yeah. I mean,
it's the least effective of all contraception methods. It's not foolproof.
Yeah, you are engaging.
But it's still natural in certain ways, and it's still open to life.
It's probably the most open to life. It's probably more open to life than using NFP because, right?
Boy, that's totally true. Because you're actually engaging in the act during fertile times, or potentially. More than likely you are.
Yeah. I think, and I'm not going to...
And then a guy was killed for it in the Bible.
So... Yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Yep.
For better, for worse, like...
Own and ruin that for everybody.
Yeah, right. Got it, that guy.
Or the interpreter who said, I don't know if that was Moses that wrote that down, well, he was killed for pulling out. So
Yep. Sorry. Really? Like, we can't do any kind of an investigation here.
6,000 years later,
autopsy, exhume his body.
Yep.
So
find the tomb of all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the anomaly to the thing that I mean, we're already speculating because this isn't the approach that the popes take, but it is a conundrum. Like, I think that is
even if you said no pulling out.
Even if you said no pulling out, fine, whatever. Like I said, I think you got these, and I'm fine. Okay, all right. Look, listen, you want the enjoyment of it for the most part, but then you don't want to risk pregnancy. I'm okay with the idea that that's not okay. That's not taking advantage of that's not using the conjugal act the way it's supposed to be. Fine, whatever.
It is better than the resentment that can build up and then spouses taking matters in their own hands. I mean,
because it happens. It's going to happen. I just think there's going to be very few Catholic marriages where this dynamic doesn't create, and one of the spouses, probably the man, is doing this with some level of frequency.
I'm not sure if a marriage can truly flourish without intimacy.
Mhm.
I mean, they'll say Mary and Joseph, but that's a poor argument.
Yeah.
That was a totally different situation.
Yeah.
So I just don't think it's possible. I think you'd have two separate people living their lives, and sure they'd be together, but it would be, and they'd probably work together, but intimacy is just a marital enhancer.
I think marriage
it's a multiplier.
I think marriage can survive, but I think it's really hard for it to thrive.
People can survive under
exactly. Like people,
survival is not the standard.
Yes, exactly. But I think it becomes the standard. They'd be like, well, they didn't die.
Yeah, they're still married.
Marriage didn't fail, whatever.
They had 12 kids. They're fine.
Yeah, right. I mean, I absolutely. It is. That is as simple as it is it becomes a situation.
But their kids grew up in a cold household, and how do you measure that?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, but then, so is this the lot in life of every Catholic couple that, let's say, says we're going to try and do what the church says, we're not going to use contraception? Now, like I said, they had some infertility issues. They have 5 kids. I'm not sure if they're
just 5.
Well, yeah. I'm not sure if they could turn on and off that fertility thing. Like, I don't know if they fixed the fertility thing so that now that they because I think they've said
it's like a cheat code.
Right now we don't need it. We're not having more children.
Mm-hmm.
Well, are you having to use NFP because you're still fertile, or is it, well, we stopped doing whatever replacements we were doing and now we're not fertile again? Again, I think that makes a big difference.
That sure does. Not everybody has that kind of control.
Yeah. So, but then we've had Joe Pilot on in the past, and he, I think, more or less said they didn't really take any of this stuff seriously from the standpoint of, I think they had 3 kids. I think he fully endorses contraception and other acts, and he says we're just still wild for each other in our 80s. I'm like,
man, I mean, that guy makes marriage sound incredible, and that's what people think they're getting into when they're getting married. Like, I mean, I think that
it's not that there's not going to be bumps on the road, and I'm sure there's bumps on the road in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the bumps on the roads and the wounds should be the sort of exception to the rule. It shouldn't be baked into the fabric of it, which I think for a lot of us really is.
And I think you just assume that, you're always going to desire your wife and your wife is always going to desire you, but that does not always happen.
I pretty much always desire my wife.
Yeah. It's just not reciprocated. Huh? Yeah. I mean, that's how life is.
And we've also had couples reach out to us who have they haven't done contraception. They've used NFP, if you will, but then they have just freely used other acts for significant parts of the marriage, has large families, and seem to just have been very happy, like largely been immune from all this kind of stuff. Now, I don't know. I don't know what really goes on in those marriages or whatever, but it's just striking to me. It's small sample size, but I hear Joe Pilot, I hear this other family, and then I see this package, and I've seen it in my own marriage. Seems to go hand in hand with anyone that tries to use NFP and also none of this other stuff. And I know some will say, well, marriage is supposed to be hard. The Christian's supposed to be hard. Yeah. Okay, fine. If that's the test.
All right, we won.
Is it hard? Yeah, it's the hardest. Like, we win the prize for having the hardest marriages.
We've been able to suffer through life.
I'm just not convinced that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because marriage and life is still going to present lots of other hard things. You might still deal with infertility or miscarriages or child sickness or deaths in the family or job, just all kinds of economic
calamities could
turmoil.
occur. Yeah. Illness, cancer, everything.
Yes. It's not like you're immune from any of that, but at least this part of this really, really important nucleus of your marriage is not under constant duress. I think is really what it amounts to.
It's true.
Because I think whether you like it or not, it kind of is. I mean, it still feels like that for us. Thank God we just finally got through another brutal and abstinence window. It's just like 7 or 8 days I can handle handle that, but I'm just sorry when you get to 10, 14 days, it's just like I've seen enough of this. I'm ready for a change of scenery.
Yeah.
I just think it is such it's just such a roller coaster of frustration. So
that is NFP.
Let's go menopause. We'll deal with that bag of problems, I guess, when it comes. But
yeah.
So anyway, I couldn't help but observe that this if we do nothing else than educate people that aren't married yet, people that are getting married, or people that deal with married couples, priests. This is almost 100% predictable, unless you are super well prepared and educated for what lies ahead. Because otherwise, this is exactly how it plays out. It's going to play out this way.
And even if you know, you don't really know until you experience it.
Yeah. Yep. It is one of those things that you really have to do it to know what it actually is like, which is, I think, where celibates really struggle to really appreciate what this is like, how heavy the weight really is. So yeah,
and it is a weight, that's for sure.
It's relentless and yeah. So anyway, hopefully they don't see this podcast, so hopefully they will come onto our show. And I mean, I genuinely, I would love to have a conversation with both of these two, actually. Maybe separately.
Yep.
Like to have,
that's the best way.
Yeah. But I'm going to read their book. I told them, I said, just so you know, I'm going to read the book and I'm going to do a review of it either way. I'd really like for you to be there to have a chance to answer questions. And if they decline, I guess, I don't know. I guess that's on them at that point in time. It seems.
Well, then we can say whatever we want. Maybe I'll read it too.
Yeah. I just think, I know that we are not everyone's cup of tea. I get that. But I think if we do nothing else, I think we are very transparent and respectful, and we'll talk to anyone. It's been a little while since we've had some real confrontational interviews, but we've talked to some people that came in here with
an act
swinging,
grind,
right?
Yeah.
They came out swinging, and I thought we had just a very pleasant conversation. And I don't really think I'm going to, necessarily have much to disagree with these folks, other than if they, really just poo the struggles that people, especially men, have with this stuff. I don't know. Teach us, show us how you did it. That's all we're here for.
Yeah.
Right? We're if you're married, and the way they talk about their marriage, I mean, I love they have a really good dynamic with each other, and she seems to genuinely enjoy being around him, which I don't know that all marriages are like that, right? And so whatever they've done to make that happen, I would love to share that. I'd love to learn that for myself, and I would love to share that with other people. And, that's just genuine and sincere. So if you guys, I'm going to bring up the thing real quick here.
Maybe it's because he's the victim and he, struggled with these issues, and so she feels pity on him, or what?
Yeah, I think she comes to his defense. I think he's harder on himself than she thinks.
So maybe that's. They won't double down then.
Why didn't you try it first?
Yeah.
And let me know how that goes. Yeah, and then I'll try it. But it's to become family. This was the episode I was talking about, and then their let's see here. This is their book, Love Making: How to Talk About Sex with Your Spouse.
Who's the person that wrote the foreword?
Emily Stimson Chapman. I have no idea who that
Okay.
is. Probably someone more famous than us. So yeah, go buy the book and leave a review. But if you have a chance and want to go over to them, like I said, the only problem is you can't send them an email. I think the only way you can really interact with them is to go over on Instagram and leave a comment or send them a message, and you have to do that with your Instagram account. But encourage them to come on and say, hey, would you guys go talk about your book on the Uncharted Catholic Man? Maybe that'll make a difference. Or maybe we could find the publisher, whoever's promoting the book, and maybe that's a better way to do it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the book. I think it's supposed to be coming out in a couple of weeks or so. I'll read it. I'll tell them, hey, you want to come on and talk about it? And if they decide not to, then we'll just talk about it ourselves.
Sounds good.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Pickin. Good to see you. Thanks for always showing up in the chat. This should come out this coming Sunday. So appreciate everyone who did watch and who sees this later on. And until next time, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good one.